So getting into riding horse by moving within it. Imagine you're out picking blackberries. You'd see a blackberry on the bramble and your hand would reach out and pick it. The activity involved the mind seeing something outside yourself, which your hand reached towards in order to bring it into yourself. The process of feeding. Now we want to feel that as the way we move. I'm not coming out of myself in order to push myself into the world. I'm seeing something that I'm pulling myself towards. So the foot, I see the ground, or I listen to the ground underneath my foot, and then I pull myself towards it. So it's very much spirit. You're catching things that are outside of yourself, like the dragonfly or the firefly, this little glimmer, the will-o'-the-wisp. It's like, and you catch it. So I catch that ground and pull myself towards it. My body is just slowly relaxing, sinking, becoming heavy. But my spirit is getting more and more lively. This is the balance that we're looking for all the time in Taoism. Feel the toes of the straightening leg really extending to try and reach, and then curling to clasp and grasp. So you're getting lower and lower. So the feeling is that, instead of being interested in something that's up here that would take me up towards it, I'm very interested in what's down on the ground, like the hunter-gatherer. Imagine you're gathering herbs from the ground. Let's feel the leg. The leg, it pulls as though you're pulling that piece of ground up into your belly. Feel the circles, especially the one in the legs. Sacrum spreading, heels tending to push out, knees pushing out, but my toes coming around. So the big toes definitely angled in a little bit if you can. Well, this feeling of almost crushing down, because this curve in the lower back, which normally curves this way, I want it to feel like it's pushing back. So from the bottom of my sacrum up right to the top of the head, really, it should feel like it's just one gentle curve, the back of a circle that includes the other person. Now let's try a little bit of the circles, 2 circles. Reaching out and yielding. So it's different from, let's just try a little bit of just pulling in the rope first and just feel the difference. This doesn't involve yielding. This is just reaching out and then pulling to bring the thing that you've reached for in. It's like a piston action forwards and back, like a chuff-chuff train, you know, this thing. And then the 2 circles. So the basic difference between them, other than the fact that it's sort of continuous rather than just backwards and forwards, is the quality of yielding. So the hand reaches forwards like it did when we were just pulling in the rope. But when I start turning back, I feel as though my arm is still going forwards, and that rounds out the arm. It turns it into this ward-off shape. And then I relax that down. So it's got this point as you change direction with your waist where suddenly something opens up here, like a vacuum opens up inside the shoulder, and that sucks the other person's energy towards you. So remember, when yielding is not simply getting out of the way of the blow, it's affecting the other person's energy by adding to their impetus, sucking them towards you. What they're expecting is resistance. If they're going to strike, they're expecting to hit something. You don't just take the target away, you actually replace it with a vacuum that sucks the person towards you. So I soften here. That's it. And this is really important. This is basically what makes it Tai Chi. So, oh, and I want to feel that. I really relish that. It's almost like it goes into slow motion, even slower motion at that point, almost grinds to a halt. And this is where we needed all of that pushing hands experience, because without that, it's difficult to appreciate just how important this is. You know, I can show it to people here, but they don't really do it because they've never felt how it actually affects another person. Even if the other person doesn't seem to be responding or doesn't seem to be affected by it, you can feel that it is. It's actually working on their energy. You're softening the other person. And in the process, you're softening yourself, of course. It's delicious. And then turn it just into the two circles. But of course, it contains that this sense of you going around something all the time in order to include that thing within yourself. So I'm not just grabbing the person's arm or yielding to their fist. I'm going all the way around them and taking the whole of them in. And same thing, but with one foot forward. So from bow and arrow. And now we can really feel these circling around the foot. Trying to really relax across the sacrum. So pain in the knees is normally because there's a fight going on between you trying to push your knees out and your hips trying to pull your knees in. So I want to just relax here so that I can get into this hip, and then it will just flow down the leg and naturally take me around the outside edge. If I'm having to do too much with my knee, it just implies that I'm just not relaxing at the top of the leg properly. Same thing the other side. I'm relaxing into the movement. I'm releasing here, which is allowing, as though it's my weight flowing down my leg, and that's taking my body. It's the only way we can keep the legs relaxed as we come into them. This is so difficult. It just goes against our clever mind. And it just shows how the energetic mind is almost like the opposite to the technological mind, the mind that endeavors to solve technical problems. So I'm just taken by this flow. I'm not considering, I'm not thinking, oh yes, I've got to support myself here and introduce tension into the situation because I don't believe energy can do the job for me. It's like something gushes, the floodgates open and there's a gush down the leg. Feel gravity. It's as though it's flowing down my spine. And then the sacrum pushes it into the two hip bones. If I can really relax there and just let that happen, then it will feel like my hip bones are really swelling and getting big and hefty. Especially the backs of the hips. Okay, now let's try a little bit of the heart qigong. And what I want to do is feel this point above the sternum, this soft point. Is imagine if that was open, you sort of cut a hole there, then someone should be able to look down and see your thymus just behind behind the top of the sternum. So this Qigong, I want to feel it as me, I'm reaching out, I'm drawing energy from the room, and then I'm just bringing it into this point, and it gathers in the sternum, and the sternum starts to glow, not the sternum, the thymus. And then it just explodes out. So I'm gathering energy into my thymus, and then letting it burst into the room. So remember the picture of that article. It was really a good picture. I find it really inspiring because you can really see the thymus as this thing that's like a light, yellow light, and it's butterfly shaped. So there's this sense of this fluttery butterfly type movement inside it. It's wanting to flutter away. But this exercise, it's like feeding the butterfly. And of course, butterfly in Greek is psyche. It's the same word as soul. It's very much the spirit center, that center for really light, bright spirit. It's fiery. The Danshen is watery. Danshen is like the reservoir, the pool, the dark, cold pool. And this is like the little firefly sparkling away in the darkness. And this thymus is like the head of the flower. Chinese imagine like a chrysanthemum, because they have so many petals, they sort of endlessly open. And the Danshen is just where the stem of the flower goes into the ground, where the roots come out. And then the head is like the overseer. It's sort of balancing, watching over the system. And now let's do just a little bit with the roots that come from here. Think of the legs as being like your roots. So this is just the bottom of the tree. So bringing the energy down and then seeping into the ground and drawing the water up. So down. Use the legs more. Really let the knees out and go down. Riding horse again. And then stepping or bringing the foot up to start. So round the foot. Again, I want this. What they say is for it to be energetic, there has to be movement, but in movement in both directions. So when you're yielding, effectively what's happening is you're allowing something in to come towards you. And the opening to that means that you swell around it so that there's something coming in towards you and you're reaching behind it. So that's yielding, and that just means the system becomes energetic. If it was just in one direction, it would be forceful, or if it was one direction against the other direction. This is allowing something in and reaching behind. So there's a separation between the two flows. It's exactly the same when I put my weight into the foot. There's a feeling that I'm drawing that piece of ground up into me. And to do that, I have to slip around it with my own weight and my own mind. It's much more in the mind. It's all in the mind, this. So I put the big toe, and then as I bring the weight into the foot, I'm sucking it into myself, which means I basically have to empty to make space for it. So I go around it. Draw that piece of ground towards me, which means I get pulled towards it, as though it comes up into my belly. So the hand that's on the same side of the body helps the visualization. It helps me go around the edge. And the other hand helps draw the ground up into the belly. One hand with each of the flows, circling down. And then basically this is really just straight up, but up the inside of the leg. And it's pretty much exactly the same as when we did the 2 circles with the yielding. I reach out and then I really have to soften here. I have to make space here. It's almost like the space appears from nowhere. And so it's empty because there's nothing's filled it yet. So something opens up here. It's the same with my leg. As I come round the edge, something opens up here. And that is enough to suck the ground up into that space. We practice this to catch the feeling, that feeling of, oh, and taking the child or the beloved into your arms. You know, you're comforting them, but you're also comforting yourself. And it's always a little bit tearful. Round here. And then this can just rise up into me. Circling with the arm and the leg and drawing up and in with the other hand and the leg, or the inside of the leg. And sometimes you can catch it, sometimes you can't, yeah? When you feel it, just really practice it. And you'll know if you practiced it well, because the next day you won't even want to think about it, let alone practice it again. Very early 90s, just before Max was born. He was born 92. So the end of our tenure in Wimpole Street, John got me into doing the weight training. He just made it clear. He said, look, I don't really want you to become physically stronger, although it wouldn't harm you. I just want you to learn the way of growth, what's involved in growing. And the thing about the weights was they're just very clear. You know, that's what they say about the iron. You know, it's just so honest. That 10 kilos is always going to weigh 10 kilos. It's not going to weigh 8 just because you're feeling a bit tired. And so you work hard, you get inspired, and you really push beyond yourself. And the next day you feel like death warmed up because you're so sore and so spiritually tired, whacked. But you just learn that is the way of it. you will not grow without going through that process of real hard work. And it's the same with any growth. It doesn't have to be physical. Spiritual growth is just the same. When your spirit breaks through and you make real progress, then it can kill you. In Tai Chi, they call it a washout of old strength. You just get burnt out because the spirit has burnt itself up, and then it can take 6 months to get your enthusiasm back. And that's what a lot of depression is like now. People just aren't replenishing their batteries in the right way, and so they just burn out. And then once you get that, it's very difficult to get out of it because you need like an extended break. And you can have like a little break and think, oh yeah, I'm okay now. And then realize, shit, no, I'm not. I'm circling, I'm gathering that ground up into me, like hugging the child. And just pull the leg up. So the higher I can pull my knee, the more I can feel myself settling into the sacrum and the lumbar spine. It's like a container, like a cup that my Dan Chang can just nestle into. Curvature in the lumbar spine is normally pushing the Dan Chang forwards. You know, the image of the English guy with the beer belly that's flopping over his belt. It's the opposite of that we want. So I bring the knee up, and the higher I can get it, the more my lower spine becomes the cave for my Dan Chen. This exercise is the best one, really. And it's just so difficult. We're basically trying to rewrite our whole body, our posture. This is the flaw in the human posture, really. We're not quite ready to stand up straight as a species. So we've had to force it a little bit. So we've had to bring too much curvature into the lumbar spine, which has separated the heart and the belly. And then the head just becomes this thing that's disconnected from the earth and just becomes rampant. Trying to get the heart and the belly feels like it's rising towards the heart, and the heart is dipping down into the belly. It's very much John's thing of just getting this whole torso just to be one unit. And this is why, the fetus pose in yoga is so important for them. It's like remembering the time we were perfect. So before we came out of the womb and started having to deal with gravity, it's really when we stand up. You see the child, when the child learns how to sit, the vertical spine, they're just perfect. Their spines are so beautifully erect. And they're just very, very attentive. And then as soon as they try to stand on their feet, you get this real curvature here. And their life now becomes a life of compromise, of this balance that's always toppling. And I think, one of the big problems with babies is that we encourage them to stand and walk too soon. So John was unusual. I mean, what he told me was, they were worried about him because he didn't stand and start walking until he was well over 3. I mean, he told me that, he just realized that if he stood on his own, no one would pick him up and carry him around, and being naturally lazy. But I suspect there was something wrong, because I remember seeing a photograph of him when he was a little boy, and he had calipers, like leg braces. So he may have had something wrong with his. I know he had one leg that was a good 2 inches longer than the other. But it just meant that he didn't have that anxiety associated with standing up. Okay, so let's just bring it back. The sinking. A mind that is with the process of what's happening, the process that you're undergoing, the sinking. When my mind is quietly on the job, I suck the world towards me. Rather than being busy and extrovert and going out, I become very quiet and inside. And that encourages the world to sort of just come out and approach. So this is the feeling, my quietness, my insistence on just being with the sinking, with the rain that's pouring down, actually draws more raindrops onto me than would actually fall. So I'm sucking the heavens down into me. I'm sucking the ground up into me. And that's all because I'm quiet inside. To start with, we have to suck. We have to do something with the muscles inside to draw like this. But eventually it just comes from just the stillness and the quietness. That's the way the mind is naturally. And then let's bring the feet up.